Well, if you finish the work for Unit 4, you started to realize that the whole fundamental ground of innate health is very different from what we're used to right now in the world. That there are many, many, many therapeutic approaches to people, and many of which are very helpful, and all of which are grounded in the idea that we have to do something about the content of people's thinking. They deal in the world of the already thought. So if you're struggling with your memories, the assumption is that your memories have a sort of solid standing in your life, that they're entrenched, and that you have to somehow deal with them, although you can't change them. So you have to reframe them or reconsider them or put them in a different perspective or whatever. If you're dealing with painful in the present time situations like fear or anxiety, that those are serious feelings that we have to address. And the idea of innate health is, once you've thought something, once you've created it, it's in the past. It's the past is a moment-to-moment thing that as soon as you've had a thought, you experience that thought, and then if you don't cling to it, if you don't do anything with it, if you don't get frightened by it, if you don't try to change it or fix it, it passes, and another thought comes to mind, and another thought, and another thought, and another thought. That we live in this dynamic flow of thoughts, and understanding the flow, understanding before thought, understanding where thought comes from, is what sets us free from the content of any particular thought. We realize, I made it up, I don't like it, okay, it's going. That thought is like a passing cloud. It's there and then it's gone. And the only way that ironically, the only way that you can continue to suffer from a group of thoughts or a set of thoughts or a single thought is to continually bring it to mind. And in my mind, quite innocently, most of what we do to help people with their stress and their anxiety and their depression and these commonly experienced problems is to keep the thoughts on their mind. Go over it and over it and over it. And yet the more you go over it, the more real it looks to you, the bigger it is, and the more seriously you take it, because you think, well, if I keep going over this, and it gets worse, then it must be really important. But really, it's a phenomenon of the principles at work, that when you bring something to mind, it looks real. You bring it to mind again, it looks real again. And this is a very sensitive subject, because there's a very strong feeling out there that, based on the assumption that thoughts are real, that they have a life of their own, that we have a structure of thoughts that we're sort of building and rebuilding and changing and fixing and adding to, like an old house. So for a lot of people that have put a lot of effort into fixing their thoughts, this is kind of shocking. But the effort itself is what's keeping the thoughts so powerful. It's giving them power because we have to keep bringing them up. And I remember one time it was Sydney Banks, who was such a wonderful person, and who really saw the principles so deeply and shared them with the world. And he used these little ordinary common sense ways of describing it. And I remember I was listening to him talk one time, and he said, like if you had a baby and you gave the baby a bath and it's all wet, and then you take the baby and you want to dry the baby off, you don't put him back in the bath, because it's going to get wet again. So And by the same token, if you have a person who's struggling with their thinking, with the contents of thinking that they've already thought, you don't throw them back into that content and ask them to look at it again and again and again. Because if they turn their back on it and just leave it alone, other thoughts will come to mind, wiser thoughts. And the quieter we get, the more we start to appreciate peace of mind and start to look in that direction, the more distance and perspective we get on thoughts that we've had before, and the clearer we understand our lives, and the less agitated we are. And that's a beautiful thing.